You know, when you think about a major trade war, what comes to mind? Cars, maybe? Steel? Well, what if I told you the biggest trade conflict of the decade wasn't over any of that, but over garbage? Yep, we're about to dive into a geopolitical thriller about something we all create every single day. Let's just start with a number. 3.46 million tons. That is the amount of Canadian trash that crosses the border into just one U.S. state, Michigan, every single year. I mean, we are talking millions of tons of municipal solid waste. It's not a trickle. It's a relentless river of refuse flowing south. And look, this isn't just some abstract number on a spreadsheet. For the communities on the ground, this is a deeply personal threat. This quote here comes from a resident who is fighting a landfill expansion in Michigan, absolutely terrified of history repeating itself. It really grounds this massive issue in real human fear. Okay, so let's get into it. How in the world did we even get here? Well, it all starts with a simple economic incentive that basically turned the state of Michigan into a giant magnet for international trash. So that's the crucial question, right? With all the places in North America to get rid of waste, why Michigan? Well, the reason is simple. It's all about the money. And honestly, this is staggering. It costs just 36 cents per ton to dump waste in Michigan. 36 cents. Now compare that to nearly $5 in Ohio or a whopping $13 in Wisconsin. This isn't just a discount. It's a massive economic loophole that makes Michigan the cheapest dumping ground in the entire Midwest, by a long shot. So you're probably thinking, why not just raise the fee? And believe me, they've tried. But political efforts to close this loophole just failed. With local solutions completely off the table, the border remained wide open, which really set the stage for a much, much bigger conflict. And this is where a local landfill problem absolutely explodes into an international trade war. The weapon of choice? Tariffs. So back in August 2025, the U.S. government imposed this massive 40% penalty. It was designed to stop Chinese goods from being rerouted through Canada just to evade duties. It's called a transshipment penalty. Now, the target was clearly China, but the collateral damage was about to become crystal clear. Now, this shouldn't have anything to do with garbage trucks, right? I mean, Canadian trash is Canadian. Except, as it turns out, garbage isn't pure, right? Because inside an average load of municipal waste, you'll find all this stuff. Broken electronics, plastic toys, old clothes, and many of these are non-originating goods, meaning they were made in China or somewhere else. And suddenly, every single garbage truck crossing the border becomes a potential Trojan horse for tariff evasion. And this created an absolute bureaucratic nightmare for the waste haulers. I mean, as this table shows, simple trash now falls under these incredibly complex trade codes. To avoid that devastating 40% penalty, haulers would need to document the origin of every single item. It was an administrative impossibility. So this created total chaos. But just as the industry was grappling with this new reality, the entire legal foundation of the trade war was about to be blown up by a Supreme Court bombshell. The case was Learning Resources, Inc. versus Trump, and it had nothing to do with waste and everything to do with presidential power. See, these educational toy makers argued that the president couldn't just invent tariffs using emergency powers. And what happened on February 20th, 2026 was pure political whiplash. In the morning, the Supreme Court agrees and strikes down the tariffs. A huge victory, right? But just hours later, the president responds by invoking a different, much older law, Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act. By the afternoon, a new blanket 10% global tariff is in effect, and a 150-day countdown clock starts ticking. The game completely changed in a single day. So what happens now? Let's take a look at the fallout from this new standoff. For the waste haulers, for importers, for Canada, well, the relief from that Supreme Court decision lasted for only a few hours. The problem wasn't solved at all. It had just been given a new name and a new percentage.
And this is where the pressure really mounts. Take a look at Toronto's 2026 solid waste budget. Their gross expenditures are over $406 million. These are cities that are already under immense financial strain. Now you add the uncertainty and cost of a 10% global tariff on their primary method of waste disposal. It becomes a crisis.
Which brings us right back to the core of the problem. You know, the reason this trade route is so essential in the first place. There's a ticking environmental clock in Canada. The data is it's stark. Based on current disposal rates, the province of Ontario is projected to run out of landfill space entirely by 2034. That's not some distant problem. It is a capacity cliff they are racing towards. And this creates what is basically an unresolvable loop. Let's break it down. 1. Ontario is running out of landfill space. They have to export their waste. 2. Thanks to that dirt-cheap tipping fee, Michigan is the only really viable economic destination. And 3. U.S. trade policy has now turned that essential safety valve into a geopolitical weapon.
So this is the central dilemma. What started with local trash is now about global trade, national sovereignty, and our planet's very real physical limits. And it leaves us with this critical question. When something as basic as garbage becomes a weapon, and we're running out of space to put it, what comes next?